guys, Todd Anderson back today with another playtest video alongside Braun-Duin. Today we're going to be using the Blue-Red-White Miracle deck that I won SCG Cincinnati with in the Standard Open with a slight couple changes. But we're going to do a deck tech over that right now before we get started with the playtest video. Starting off with the removal package, we have 4 Pillar Flame, 4 Azorius Charm, and 4 Detention Sphere. Now, it's important to note that Pillar of Flame is the only red card in the deck. It's specifically in the deck because it's cheap. It handles creatures with Undying, and it's also pretty awesome. Once you ultimate Tamiyo the Moon Sage, you're able to use it as an actual finisher, which is nice. The Azorius Charms are awesome because not only do they act as like a pseudo removal spell, but they can also draw you a card in a pinch if you're like short on mana or need to dig for like an Entreat the Angels or something like that. But Azorius Charm is awesome because it's versatile. It has 3 different really good abilities. And then Detention Sphere, while it normally kills creatures, does have the ability to kill any non-land permanent, and that ranges from anything from Geralt's Messenger to opposing Planeswalkers, and you can even hit stuff like Underworld Connections. So Detention Sphere is very good, and I like this card a lot. We have 5 sweepers in our main deck. We have 4 Terminus, which are great to Miracle, but even fine to cast because they put the creatures on the bottom of the deck. Again, it helps deal with Undying. And then we have 1 Supreme Verdict, which is just the 5th Wrath. We have more in the sideboard, but obviously it's not that great against something like zombies because all their creatures are very resilient to it, but it is necessary in some matchups, and I think the 1 main deck is very useful. We have 4 Think Twice, which do 2 things. They help you dig for mana or spells, but they also help you trigger Miracle on your opponent's turn. Now, a lot of times it's correct to wait to flashback a Think Twice or even cast a Think Twice the first time until your opponent's turn, because sometimes you do get to Miracle things for free. And like you get like an extra Miracle step basically, but Think Twice is pretty solid. We have 2 Syncopates, which are pretty much the only counterspell that is really main deckable, I think. Dissipate, there's a pretty solid argument for Dissipate sometimes, but right now I think the fact that you can cast Syncopate for 2 mana to counter something and people just tap out constantly means that Syncopate's definitely where you want to be at the current spot, I think. So we have 2 Snapcaster Mages, which are awesome alongside the Pillar Flame and Azorius Charm. But sometimes you get to flashback like Syncopate, or after sideboard you get to flashback like Negate, Dissipate, Erase, a lot of things like that. Snapcaster Mage is definitely solid in the deck, but since we don't have that many targets for it, that's why we only have 2. And then our win conditions, we have 4 Jace Archetype of Thought. This is obviously a newer addition to the Miracle archetype, or at least like the blue control archetype, because he's new. But he is definitely worth his weight, I think, in gold. The fact that his +1 ability shuts down any sort of real aggressive strategy, and the fact that he goes up to 5 loyalty is pretty insane. And then even if your opponent doesn't have any threats in play, you can still -2 do a mini Fact or Fiction type deal where you're more than likely going to end up with 2 cards or the card that you need to stabilize the game, and either of those is a decent prospect. So his ultimate allows you to dig for your opponent's best spell, as well as, like another copy of your own Jace or a Tamiyo or something like that, or even after sideboard you can go get a Memory Adept, just depending on what you need. But his ultimate doesn't necessarily win you the game, but it's definitely solid. And then last but not least, we have 2 Tamiyo the Moon Sage, which her ultimate happens a reasonable amount of time now that you have so many good sweepers and removal spells, and you're able to lock down certain creatures like Thragtusk that are kind of annoying and you don't really actually want them to die. You can keep certain colors of mana locked down, so it's harder for your opponent to cast spells, and then draw a bunch of cards with her -2 ability if you want to. But the fact that her ultimate combines really well with Pillar Flame is pretty sweet too. And then last but not least, we have 3 Entreat the Angels. 3 Entreat the Angels, I have tried 4, I've tried 2, I really like 3. you know, you don't want to draw it for your like first couple draws in the game, but after that, it's like the only card you ever want to draw. So I don't know how to mitigate that other than just playing 3. And 3's been a solid number. You know, being able to miracle it, it's kind of like sometimes just hitting free wins off the top of your deck. It's really hard for your opponent to beat, you know, like turn 5 make, you know, a couple angels or whatever. So anyway, moving on to the sideboard. We have 6 basics. We have 4 plains and 2 islands, 4 glacial fortress and 4 hallowed fountain. These are all of our lands that tap for just blue and white. This is like the core mana of the deck because all the rest of the lands tap for red, and these are more so to help you cast Pillar Flame, but also because the mana, like, you have so many dual lands that it's very easy to splash a third color in this format, and I think that really shows how easily we can just splash Pillar Flame because we have Sulphur Fall, Steam Vents, and Clifftop Retreat. And the mana base, you know, very rarely do your lands come to play tapped, and when you don't already want them to, and then you know, like, you don't really take that much damage from your Steam Vents and Hallowed Fountains either. So and then we have 1 Desolate Lighthouse, which again is very solid because it can help you trigger miracles on your opponent's turn, but it also, when you're playing like a mirror match or something, it gives you another out to discard your excess removal spells because your deck's so full of removal for game 1. So alright, well, we're going to cut back just a second for the sideboard. Let's go ahead and take a look at that. Alright, well, the sideboard I think is pretty solid. There are only a few matchups where I actually want to sideboard more cards in. For control matchups, I think you want Jace, Dissipate, Negate, and Geist of Saint Traft, and even Erase. You have a ton of cards to bring in control matchups because you have so many removal spells that are basically just dead cards. Like, you don't want Pillar Flame, you don't really want Azorius Charm too much, and you don't really want Terminus either. So I could even see an argument for siding in all 15 cards in the mirror because Supreme Verdict does kill your opponent's Geist of Saint Traft without being able to be countered, and it also kills their Entreat the Angels. So potentially you can side in all 15 in the mirror. Now, against the other aggressive decks, I think you really just want 2 more Supreme Verdict, and you can cut stuff like Syncopate, and that gives you a couple more cards to stabilize the board. We have a couple of Jace Memory Add-ups which can come in against various matchups, but it's an alternate win condition against Slaughter games. Overall, it's pretty solid. Like, if you're not trying to mill them out, you can just, you know, draw like 3 cards, get them up to 7, and then, you know, mill your opponent for 10, and then force them to draw 20, and that's usually enough to kill them. So the 4 Geist of Saint Traft, again, normally come in for control, but really it is an alternate win condition against like a slower ramp deck that focuses on using Slaughter games. And I do want to put emphasis on that card because it's pretty hard to beat if your deck's not set up correctly. And I think Geist of Saint Traft could help in some matchups where they're trying to Slaughter games you out. You can't always, you know, use Entreat the Angels to beat them. So the 2 erases last week were Sundering Growths, but I think Erase is better because you can exile Rancor, and there aren't too many artifacts you're really that worried about. Key runes can be problematic at times. If they start to pick up, maybe we can go back to Sundering Growth, but I think Erase is really good. Being able to exile Rancor is very important against like zombies and the green aggro decks that play Rancor. So, and then again, Negate can come in against various strategies that focus on spells rather than creatures, Negate, like, alongside like stuff like Snapcaster Mage, Syncopate, and Dissipate, just gives you like a good counterspell suite, you know, where you can counter a lot of different spells at a lot of different points in the game, regardless of what your mana setup is like. And then we have 2 Dissipates, which are sort of just a catch-all counterspell. I bring these in on occasion against decks that have Thragtusk in them, just because most of the decks in Standard right now don't play Cavernous Souls. Like, even Joe Bernal's Black-Red Zombie deck from the top 4 of SCG Cincinnati didn't play Cavernous Souls, so Dissipate was actually decent against him because I was able to counter Geralt's Messengers and Falconwrath Aristocrats, 2 cards which are pretty tough for me to beat normally. So, All right, well, guys, that's the sideboard. This is Blue, Red, White Miracle Control. We'll be right back with Brian's deck tech on Junk Planeswalkers, so stay tuned for that. It's a cool deck.